Let's talk today about what you should do if you have been fired or laid off from your job. Getting fired or laid off can feel like your whole world just stopped, especially these days. But let me tell you something, it's not the end of your story, it's redirection. It can be a totally new beginning. It's the start of a new strategy. So, first of all, you need to start looking at it like that. And I know this from personal experience. I've been fired. It's been years and years ago. I mean, a long time ago. But let me tell you something. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And it forced me to grow. If I had not gotten fired from my job as an account executive, I would not be an attorney today. So think about that. It changed my whole life and in a good way. So I went through the embarrassment, the anger. I get it. But not only do I know from my personal experience, obviously my job every day, from the time I get up to the time I go to bed, is talking to people who've been fired or laid off. And I love it because I get to see them at their lowest when they first come to see me. I see them at their angriest, at their most insecure, and I get to see them come out on the other side. So I know from personal experience and from dedicating my life to helping people who go through this every day. So I know it'll be all right. So I turned my pain into purpose. Literally, I built a law firm from it. Today, I want to break down what you should do immediately after losing your job, both legally, financially, and emotionally, to protect yourself and your future. First and foremost, don't panic. Protect your paper trail. Don't say too much in your termination meeting. Don't sign anything right away. Talk to an attorney first. If they give you papers during your exit meeting, a termination letter, separation agreement, confidentiality form, don't rush to sign anything. You have the right to review it, and indeed, you need to review it because there are all types of rights that you might be giving away if you sign the document. So you should not sign it right away. So what you do next really depends on what happened, what led up to your termination or being laid off. If there were red flags leading up to your firing, write ups, retaliation after a complaint, any of those things, and you think that you might have a case and you really want to be careful, making sure that you walk out of there with everything. So if you have emails, notes, anything at the office still, make sure you have everything. Make sure you take everything with you. If there are people at the office who might speak up for you later on, say you decide to file suit, make sure you have their contact information because this is pretty much it. You're leaving and you won't have access, not so easily, to these same people. So make sure you walk away with everything. Number two, apply for unemployment immediately. You'd be surprised how many people skip this step. They do it, sometimes maybe they don't know, sometimes, very often, it's pride or fear. But don't let your emotions cost you your income. And it's not a ton of money, but let me tell you, if you're laid off or if you're without work for a period of time, that check coming in, even though it's smaller, will be something that you'll look forward to and it'll help. So make sure you apply for unemployment. No, there's no guarantee that you'll get it, but if you don't apply, I can assure you you won't get it. If you were fired, there maybe you won't get it. It depends on why you were fired. Sometimes, and this has been an interesting experience, but sometimes when you apply, the first thing they do, and this is all the time, when you apply, the Department of Labor will contact your employer to confirm that the reason you stated in your application for benefits is the real reason that you were terminated. Sometimes the employer will try to fight your employment. Keep going anyway. Because if they fight your employment, you have the right to file a notice of appeal. You can appeal that decision. And once you appeal it, you will have an opportunity to appear for a meeting telephonically, and on that call will be your employer, you, and someone from the Department of Labor. Now, the Department of Labor is going to listen to both sides. And if the employer fired you for a reason that's not legitimate, you might still get unemployment. It makes it a lot harder. if you quit. But again, don't just assume you're not going to get it. The only way you know for sure you won't get it is if you don't even try. So make sure you file for unemployment and do so immediately. Sometimes your employer will say during your termination, depending on the circumstances surrounding your separation from the company, sometimes they'll say that they are not going to contest your right to get unemployment, and that's great if they do that. So it's not likely that they'll sign an agreement saying that they agree to not contest your unemployment. If you can record them, that's great. So you want to make sure that you have some evidence that they've said it. But at the end of the day, if they are going to contest it, they're going to contest it. If they have a right to contest it, there's nothing that's going to stop them from doing it. So, just I would ask them if they're going to, and at least you'll know what their plans are going forward. Anyway, number 3, make sure you review any severance agreement that they offer carefully, because again, you will be giving up significant rights if you sign a severance agreement, and sometimes for very little in return. So you could think that you have a case, and it might be a very solid case, and they might be offering you 2 weeks' pay. Now, up to you as to whether or not you think that that is sufficient, but if you sign that severance agreement, you are giving up your your right to sue. So make sure that you understand what you're signing. I really suggest that you have an attorney review it first. I review severance agreements for a flat fee, so you can contact my office about that. But if you don't contact me, contact some attorney who is an employment lawyer, and make sure you understand what you're signing before you sign it. In addition to agreeing to give up your right to sue, most severance agreements require you to agree to never apply to the company again. And it doesn't just include the company that you worked for directly. Most of the time, it includes any of their subsidiaries, affiliates. They are pretty broad with that language. So make sure you just make sure you know what you're signing before you sign. Number 4, you should request your final paycheck and benefits information so that you know what's coming up. So the laws are different depending on the state that you're living in. Sometimes you're entitled to your final paycheck right away. Your employer should give you a separation notice so that you have a written document stating your express reason or their express reason for terminating your employment. It's amazing how seldom I see employers comply with this. And it's interesting how often they'll state one reason on your separation notice to the extent they provide one. They'll state one reason on your separation notice, you end up in a lawsuit against them and they change it, and that helps your case tremendously. That's one thing we look for in law. Are they offering shifting reasons for your separation, for your termination? If you got fired for doing something wrong, then that should be the reason they fired you. It shouldn't be for one reason one day and a different reason the next day. But that is something that jams employers up all the time. They lose on that. So anyway, if you can get information about your final paycheck and also a separation notice, that would be great. Wouldn't surprise me if they did not give it to you, because that happens all the time, but they're supposed to give you a separation notice so that there is no question about why they terminated you to the extent that there's a termination. When you go to file for unemployment, they will probably request your separation notice. So see if you can get that before you leave. You should also ask them about unused vacation time, PTO, or sick days. Some states require them to pay you for those days or in that time. So check. That varies from state to state. So find out what you're entitled to in that regard also. Check your health coverage. If you have insurance, a lot of times they will offer you COBRA. So again, depending on the state, depending on the employer. But these are questions that you should ask about in your termination meeting or your severance meeting, whatever caused you to separate from the company before you exit. These are questions that you probably want to ask before leaving. Number 5, if you believe that your separation from the company was for discriminatory reasons, then you should file a discrimination or retaliation claim and you have to go through the EEOC first. I'm talking about for private employers. This applies to most federal employers, governmental agencies as well. It's just that sometimes you have additional steps that you have to go through if you work, say, for example, the government. You have additional steps that you have to take before you go to the EEOC. When I speak, I'm speaking primarily about private employers, but to the extent that you have to file with internally with the EEO office, then you should make sure you do that and then follow up and file with the EEOC. You'll have to check on that because again, I'm speaking to primarily privately owned companies. So you have a very limited amount of time to get down to the EEOC. So if you're planning to file, do that right away because the deadlines are not, I mean, it's unforgiving. You miss the deadline and it's game over. Some people wonder if you can file even if you've already been fired. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. But again, you have just usually it's like 180 days. I would advise you to check the EEOC website to find out your particular circumstances and what the guidelines are for you in particular. But I want to put you on notice that deadlines in employment law are I mean, there are a lot of them and they are unforgiving. So it's something that you can't avoid. So get on top of it right away. And once you've done all of these procedural things, these technical things, you're going to have to turn around and look at your life because it's going to be very different. And so that gets me to number 6, which is to rebuild your routine. It's hard after you get fired. It's like, you're used to getting up and going to work every day. No matter how much you hate the job, it's part of your routine. And for a lot of people, it becomes their identity. It's who you are. And so when that goes away, you wake up and you have nowhere to go. You have no one waiting on you. It's hard. I know that personally, and I have dealt with so many people who have gone through this. And it's especially hard if you've worked for a company for a really long time or if you really cared about your job. It's very hard. That is why I'm a big proponent of treating your job like a business transaction. You go there not to make family, not to make friends. You go there to get a paycheck. And you promise to give them a job, give them your services, and they promise to give you a paycheck, and that should be the end of story. Because the more attached you are, the more difficult it is when you have to separate, especially if it's not your decision to do so and you're not ready to go. When I deal with employees who have been fired, maybe they are taken by surprise, maybe they were really dedicated to the company, they are crushed. And a lot of people who end up in that situation end up in therapy, and that's an extremely common thing. And, it's part of it. So, what you should do once you're fired is establish a new routine because the meetings that you had to go to, the emails that you're receiving, all of that goes away. It's just nothing. You wake up and it's like you're saying, what is my purpose now? So you address that by creating structure. You should wake up at the same time, dedicate a few hours a day to job searching. I tell people, treat finding a job like your new job. So if it's networking, if it's learning a new skill, taking online courses, whatever it is, you have to establish a new routine because you'll become really depressed if you don't. You've got to have a purpose that's kind of work related. So make sure that you figure out what your next steps are and start it right away. Start it right away. I suggest if you are still employed and thinking that you're about to be fired, that you already start thinking about these things because it's hard. But the good news is, you get beyond it, and most of the time, you're so much happier because you're probably in a very stressful situation right now anyway. In addition to that, you should schedule some time to just move around, exercise, get fresh air. Because, and I'm a big, big, big believer in that, it makes such a difference. Remember, getting fired changes your schedule in a big way, but it doesn't change your value. And finally, number 7, treat this like a reset, not a rejection, because that's all it is. a reset, redirection. That's all it is. Some of the best chapters of your life will not start until you're forced to turn the page. I know that again from personal experience and from dealing with people who deal with this every day. You should use this time to reassess. Even if you like the job, did it really align with your values? Were you growing or were you just surviving? Do some thinking, reading, researching, figuring out who are you? What do you want? What makes you happy? This is a time to do that. Because sometimes being let go shows you just how much you are actually settling. So take what you've learned and build something better. At the end of the day, and when you deal with this all day, every day, when you've been through it yourself, you know it's not the end of the world. That in fact, most of the time people end up a lot happier. I was sitting here thinking about this the other day, and I just can't think of any of my clients who come back and said, I just am still so unhappy. They go on and they're happy and they live life. It continues. It's just a job. It really is just a job. You didn't fail, you were freed. Look at it that way. And what you do next determines whether this becomes your downfall or your comeback story. You can make it your comeback story. I'll see you next shift.